Hey guys, welcome to today's plumberparts.co.uk video. My name's James. Today what we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about adding a radiator to a heating system. Watch me find out where we're going to tee into the existing system, build the wall up, get the pipes down to where they need to be, and then get our stubs out in the right positions, plus how to plan good anchorage points if you're making a new wall, and having a chat about the tools that I'm using to do this. Remember, all the tools I use in this video are available on the Amazon store. We'll hang the radiator on the wall and we'll talk about balancing the heating system out, getting it ready for this new radiator to be added on to the current system. So yeah, what we've got above us, we've got a radiator, very small radiator above us, and we've got two 15mm pipes that actually drop down from 22 to 15mm to feed that radiator. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop down these two pipes here, and because I want to cover this sliding door here inside a false wall, I'm giving myself the perfect opportunity to hide those two pipes that feed it down inside the studding that I'm going to build up here, okay? Also, I'm going to be doing something that not a lot of chippies do, even though I repeatedly ask them to do it on site, and that's to consider some anchorage points when we're building the wall up. Now, I understand that if you are going to be doing this on a wall that's already built, this is going to be quite difficult to do, in fact, virtually impossible. But because we're building a stud wall up here from scratch, why don't we make it easy for ourselves to attach a radiator to the wall when the wall is finished? So first up, let's pop upstairs and I'll show you the higgledy-piggledy pipework, which is an English saying, and show you how we're going to hopefully connect to that and how we're going to find out where our holes are and all that sort of stuff. So I've already whipped the radiator off up here. Now the system is actually filled up again and running at the moment. I actually think the sliding door is about here going that way. So we're in a really good position to be able to figure out, where are we going to be drilling, where are we going to be going, and making sure that we get these two pipes in. Now, you can't see it very well at the moment, but we've got a spur that's on here, like so. This is in 22mm just there, and that spur carries on through there. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get this floorboard lifted up, and then we can get our holes drilled downstairs so we know roughly where we're going through, roughly guessing how far away from the wall we are, trying to get into this cavity part here. If that happens, then we're on to a winner. What we are going to do, so this is our flow and return here for the heating. Now back in the day, it would have mattered which way round. We'd have been like, which one is the flow, which one is the return. We'd have put the heating system on, we'd have tried to fill these pipes to see which was which. But nowadays it doesn't matter so much because we have a thing called universal TRVs, and that is a thermostatic radiator valve that has an arrow either pointing to itself or away from itself to denote that it doesn't matter which way round the flow of the TRV is. Back in the day, if you'd have put it on the wrong way round, as the TRV started to shut, you'd have started to hear like whistling or drumming, something like that to indicate that something was wrong. I mean, what I'd like to do now is we just want to sort of pick this away. Ooh, this is where we get a little bit of dust going on. Just love dust. And we'll see down there, that is roughly where we're hoping to come up in a minute. So what I did upstairs, rather than measuring from the end wall, I thought actually, I know where these pipes drop down, the flow and return for our secondary return system. I can measure from those pipes across. And that was 80 centimetres. So that means we should be looking to make a little investigative hole just there. So the other thing I want to do is I know that my wall is going to be sort of roughly this wide. So I kind of want to give myself a little bit of a sort of distance width to go from. So really I'm going to want to drill my hole here. But let's pop this up. Right, let's go and have a look upstairs and see what we can find. You guys can't see it very well, but look, it's right there. That is the end of our screwdriver sticking through. Hey, magic, we're all good. Right, so now I know where that's coming out. I'm just going to trim out some of this lath plaster, clear it all up in here with my multi-tool. Right, so now we can see exactly where our screw's coming through. We've cleared this cavity out. We can now go back downstairs, make these holes a little bit bigger. We know we're quite safe to do that from underneath now. And then we can work downstairs to get our radiator and everything measured out. Right, there we go, 2 holes drilled. Right then, so it's time for us to meet the radiator that we're putting in. I've actually used this in another video, and I bought this ages ago to shove onto the house here, so it's finally going to be back in its resting place. The main thing we want to know about it is its rough width, 45 centimetres, so 450mm. The centre to centre height, which is about 1730. Once we know that, we can then plan out roughly where we want to put it on our wall back through there. But I'm just going to write those measurements down first before I forget them. Oh yes. When it comes to our studding, we are going to have to do a certain thing because obviously a width of a board is 1200, so we want to leave 400mm centres for our studs, standard. Now I've asked my darling wife, who's out of shot, and I've also asked Big G, where do they want the radiator? And the general consensus is that it's going to be up towards this end here. Then you can have a look at the position of it. You can say, right, I know I've got to put a single socket in here, and I could go and grab one or something that's a similar width and just lay that down here and go, right, does that work? You know, if that's going there, I'm probably going to have the width of a stud there. Will that fit inside that? Yes, it will. Will I be able to get my pipes out past that? It might be a little bit tight, so let's just move it over a little bit, give ourselves just a little bit more room. And then we know then that our radiator is roughly going to be going here. You see I'm marking the floor as well, where our stud's going to go. The reason we're doing this is because what I want to do when we build our stud work wall, I want to actually put a couple of noggins in to take the weight of the radiator. I don't want to have to rely on plasterboard fixings on their own. I want to be able to integrate a slab of wood to go into this to make sure that this happens okay. So let's get on with doing a bit of woodwork, which is, let's face it, super easy. So just measuring out and getting that bottom plate in, it's the sort of first thing to go for me. Obviously, I'm not a chippy, but this is the way I like to do it. You probably noticed I've now got my brand new Bosch SDS Beast, and I've also upgraded my impact driver as well. Everything's looking wicked, but you wait until you see my chop saw in a sec. You're gonna go mental. Right, so I'm getting my top plate in now, and we're working our way up off that. I really wish I had my laser here. I've ordered a laser online and it hasn't arrived yet. I'm just waiting for it to get here. Oh, and if I did have it, this would be super easy, but it's at the moment it's all wedging and stuff like that. But what I've done, I've marked the two holes here where we're going to be coming out, and I'm going to drill two slightly larger holes in this plate here, ready to receive our pipes as it comes down. Now, I'm going to probably be working back from here, so 1200. Ooh, we're probably just going to miss it. That'll be wicked if we do. The thing is, right, 1200 is the standard width for a bit of plasterboard, for a sheet of plasterboard, and we want to try and keep our holes away from that, and they're just coming inside there at the moment, so that means these two pipes I'll be able to set over onto a bit of stud, drop them down so they're nicely tied out the way, and that's really important with the moving window in the background, and then bring them through, pop them through the stud there, and out ready, centered up, ready for our radiator. Yes guys, I know what you're thinking, he's not a chippy, why has he got one of these? But I'll tell you what, what an absolute beast. I had another chop saw and I've had it ages and I got rid of it, and it made me, I was like, I want to get some new bits and pieces, some new gear, and I've been buying in some Bosch stuff. Now, number one, the reason I thought I'd get that is this 12 amp hour battery, and this is a battery one run beast. Just slots in there like that, easy peasy. Even though yesterday I did test running it on a 4 amp hour little baby battery and it worked fine there as well, so I was quite happy with that. Look, don't get me wrong, I don't want to talk about the tools that I'm using, I just really like this. You can flip these out, and some of you chippies might be like, oh, that's totally normal, bruv. I don't know. You know, it's one of those things, isn't it? You might also say, how do you feel qualified as a plumber to talk about a tool like this? Well, I did build my own house, and I also built the studio that we film in, and I also built my office at the end of the garden, which is also a gym, that I haven't been using for a little while. Or I should have used it a lot more. I've been using the kitchen that I built quite a lot too. The room that I'm in now I built. That's why that bit up there's not finished. Right then gang, doing the impossible there, showing you that plumbers can also do carpentry. And a nice little bit of carpentry I think it is as well. I mean, it's probably not 100% standard. I put a double sole in at the bottom, then I covered over my marks by accident, so I've now got to redo those quickly. But we've still got our two pipe holes coming out here. What we're going to do, we're going to bring our two pipes down in plastic, we're going to pop through here, and then round and across out to where our radiator is. A couple of considerations we want to think about. Usually what I do if this is going to be a proper bit of studding, I'd insulate all this, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm not worried about there being any like a drum effect from this. I'm going to be bracing these bits along here to take the weight of our radiator. Good idea if you're doing this, just Pop a couple of blocks of wood down, depending on where you're working. That will just give you a little bit of height to work on this rad. If it's a tall radiator, if it's 1800 high, you're going to want to put a blanking plug in. Now, the reason for that is, if we actually look closely, the blanking plug will go in like this, and then it'll get sandwiched right in when we actually put our first gasket union on. They usually get sandwiched just behind there. So look, there it goes in like that, and then pops in, then does up, and we're all good. The reason for that is if we don't do that, what tends to happen is water will just rush across the bottom of the radiator and leave the rad, and you'll end up with columns that aren't hot, and you'll just end up with issues like that. For those of you who haven't watched the video yet, this is an Aladdin auto vent. This allows us to vent the radiator automatically. This will shut and stop water coming out. They're very good. This is the cartridge version. These are brilliant. I really like these because they just allow you to just vent away. You don't have to worry about it. You can just leave this lot filling up and it will just do it itself. I have done videos on this as well, so I'll leave a link to this video all about Aladdin auto vents in the description below. Now there's a few considerations as well. Consider your skirting board. Just pop a bit down if you like, there, and then just whip a line across like that, and then that will give you an idea of what's the lowest point. Now straight away I think, well, we're probably getting a little bit tight there now. We're going to have to bring this up. So if we go to about here, bottom of the radiator's there, we know we're well clear of any bits and bobs. So the first thing I'm going to do is just whack a noggin in now. And I know exactly where the centre of it needs to be. And my noggin is going to be quite a large bit of wood, quite flat, and it's going to be slightly above these pipe bits, okay? Because I know that my brackets for the bottom are actually going to be up here. So what I want to do is put a nice big bit of 6x2 in or something like that, just so we've got a good noggin plate there. And that is an absolutely amazing anchor point for a radiator. A nice way of doing this, if you don't want to faff about with the tape measure, it's totally up to you. You can put a piece of wood exactly on the height where you want the radiator to be, lift it up, and then you've got an exact measurement for you to put in your top noggin, just like I have here. Right then gang, now that we've got those two in, why don't we just temporarily hang this radiator up, and then we can first fix our pipes so they stick out as near to where we think they're going to stick out. And then we can also do our measurements up and across so we can then get our plasterboard on. Right then everyone, I'm just going to hang the radiator temporarily here. Now I know some of you are going to be like, oh, I want to know how to measure the brackets out. I'll be showing you how to do that in the next video. So have no fear. The reason we're putting it up now is so we can get our exact pipe centres for our first fix. I like to have my pipes come out and then go up in, purely because I want to put a drain off valve, because this is what we call a drop down leg radiator. So once we put this radiator in, we could drain all the rest of the system out, but this leg wouldn't drain. That's why we want to put a drain off down there. You always need to do that on drop down leg rads. Even if I was going to have a drop down leg and feed a radiator here and a radiator there, I wouldn't be able to do that without having that drain off, because someone's going to come along one day, slacken that nut off, thinking the whole system's drained out, and they're going to get a bit of a surprise because this whole radiator is going to be full of water. Right then, so what we're going to be doing, we're going to be using these nifty little beasts from Buteline. We're going to run our two pipes down here and across to where we need them, and then these, quite simply, just clamp on their ends like that, and that's pretty much it, it's done. So let me just get my holes drilled first. That's the first thing I've got to do. Get myself a big old hole drill. And I'm leaving a little cubby hole at the other end to get in here and give it a good clear out every so often. Bit of gaffer over the end, just stops any debris going into the pipe. Feed that beast on through. Feeding, feeding, feeding. Right, and we've got a bit of movement either way, so I'm happy to get this. Now I like to do these and just give it a little twist. That's that one cut now, and then standard bit of Buteline here. I now know that I can just leave this here. I can actually hang my head over the edge of this and mark this centre here, and then we know what all I've got to do after that is get an elbow on here. I can actually file off this chrome and solder an elbow on, which is what I might do, or I can put a compression on. then guys, so now we've got the radiator up, we've got our pipes in. I mean, these can't move anywhere. So the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to make up a quick map on a piece of paper so I know exactly where all my fixing points are, where my studs are and everything like that. So once I've got my first bit of plasterboard up on here, I don't lose track of where I've gone or anything like that. It's quite easy to do. It's more a matter of measuring over points and then measuring up points, and you're all good pretty much. So it also means now that I can take this radiator off, we'll just pop it over here out of the way, and then we can get our first bit of plasterboard up. As always, along the way, have a little bit of a clear up. And also the box that I drew all those measurements from, I've already lost, so I've got to go and look for that. But we're nearly at the end of the job now, just going to fill this up. And this is the bit I love doing actually, get a bit of plasterboard in and then make it look all neat so the plasterboarding dude, my mate Matt, will come along and go, you are a better tacker than tackers are. In this video, we're going to hang the radiator on the wall, we're going to get it piped up, we're going to connect it into the heating system, we're going to fill the heating system up, and then I'll show you the radiator getting hot using a thermal camera. We'll then cover the minor alterations we sometimes have to do on a heating system. Remember, all the tools that I use in this video you can buy on our Plumber Parts Amazon store. Click them at the end of the video. We've got this drop down leg here, and drop down legs each need their own individual drain off, because if you drain off at the boiler or somewhere else, that leg might not drain itself out. So you have to make sure there's one on every drop down leg. So I've got the corner valves, bought them on Amazon, didn't I? I'll put a link to them actually in the video description below. So what I've done, I've bought one of these, right? This is a not very standard drain off, okay? So we can just undo that. The thing is that I'm gonna have a problem with the depth to get this in as it goes straight back into the wall. So there might be a little bit of skullduggery in this video, trying to get round it. So let's get the radiator in. I'll be putting knee pads on in a minute, believe me. So, and also I've got to do all the caulking under here, but I'm gonna wait until the radiator's right in the way before I do it. So firstly, let's get our centre. So we're gonna measure from the centre of the pipe to the centre of the pipe when the pipe is straight. Just like that. Don't tell me it's happened already. The pencil's gone. Centre of the pipe to the centre of this pipe, that's 560. Divide that by 2, and you've got your place to be. 560. Emily, what's 56 divided by 2? Now soon I'm gonna get a laser for this. I mean, I'm waiting for it to come in the post, but it's not here yet. And I'm absolutely gutted because I'd love to have used it on this video, but... So look, we can just mark our centre there. We don't have to put loads of marks on the wall. The thing is, right, is the top brackets are the only load-bearing part of the radiator that I'm having, because the bottom brackets are actually just stopping the radiator going into the wall. They're just plastic ones, they're not actually load-bearing. The other thing is the radiator brackets that I'm hanging on here are adjustable up and down the columns, which is great news because it means that we can get it on the wall and then just slightly adjust it up and down so that we get our centres exactly right. The one thing is that now I am going for corner valves. It does mean the radiator is going to be set a lot lower down, which might look a bit funny. So, you know what, I might just do a little test hang now and just see what it looks like. You know what, I don't think that looks too bad at all, actually. I'm going with it. Now, the thing is, what's great about this is the fact that we left ourselves so much room, didn't we, when we were putting that noggin in. There's a noggin there up here that's about that deep, if you remember from the previous video. So I know that I've got lots of play up and down. So if I went up from this line at the bottom here, we've got that little mark just up there, and then all I need to do is get my centre line all the way up. It's such a shame I don't have my laser here to do it, but there we go, just a tiny little mark there. Let's get that lined up. And there's our centre line there, and now here's our height as well. Hold on though, wait. It's lovely, we're marking everything up. We want to hang the radiator on the wall, but we've changed what we're doing, aren't we, from what we did when we planned out this, because our radiator is going to be, it was going to be sort of about this low, because we were going to elbow up, and that would have given us the room to do that really important bit and get that drain off in. What I'm going to have to do now, I'm going to have to take off the chromium, because you cannot solder onto chrome pipe. You have to solder it onto copper pipes. So I've got a little wire brush on here that will just go round and round and round. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder on my drain off, just so it's out here. And also, then I'm just going to leave a stub of copper on the other side and solder that on. And then when it comes to us putting the radiator on, we'll have the drain off and everything there already. So look at that, you can see it's coming off there. We just got to work around the pipe. This is going to take a little while, but it's well worth doing to make sure we get this right. So we're just getting these bits soldered up now. As you guys know, I like to see a little bit of solder, but this is difficult to do, and hopefully you've learned about how to solder onto chrome pipe. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you're a bit more learned now about the hazards of soldering onto chrome pipe. So we've got a centre line there, up there. We've got our centre to the top there. Now all we need to do is exactly what we did earlier on. It's very simple. We'll just measure the distance between the two centres. This part of the column here and this part of the column here. Just going to measure that and just measure it out to there, centre, centre, and then we can screw up our brackets on there, and we can do it into wood, so we've got really, really good fixings. So the basic way that we use to hang a radiator is we've got our bottom line there, that's the centre of the pipes, we've got our centre line, then we can measure the height of the radiator itself, put that centre line up high, then use a spirit level to measure that across, and once we know the centres of our radiator brackets, because we've measured the centres of our columns, we'll know exactly where to fix our radiator brackets to the wall. Right, so there we are, we're on, but we've got adjustment if we want it, because these two brackets can move up and down. It does look a little slightly like it's out, just a tiny bit, so this bracket's either got to go, just come up a little bit, something like that. Standard procedure here, look at how well that's lined up as well. Just going to pop a little bit of lock on there. Loctite is my favourite thread seal. For this, well, for most things, to be honest. And in a minute, before we tighten that up, we'll just get those back clamps popped on properly as well. So when I'm doing my valves, I always like to put a little bit of Boss White or some kind of jointing paste on the valves themselves, on the compression fittings, not just because it makes a great seal, but also it allows you to tighten up the compression fittings in a nice even way. It allows the nut to slip over in the taper. So I've done that on both sides here, as you can see. And I think you'll agree now that everything's looking like it's going really, really well. Once I've got these two on, I'm going to shut both the valves. We're just going to do a quick pressure test before we then go upstairs and connect into the system. Right then, gang, we've got it installed. We've got the two pipes on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop upstairs, and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to pressure test each line of the pipework before we put it onto the main heating system, just to make sure we don't have any little leaks that we need to fix now. It's a lot easier we do that now rather than when we've got a whole heating system of water behind that leak. Just so much longer, isn't it, to drain it out and do that. So I've got my lights set up, and obviously, as usual, Georgie. George! Hey! George! You are so grumpy. One thing I know for a fact that I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to run this round up into this radiator here. I don't want to be coming out the centres anymore for when I pop this radiator back on the wall. And also, that's probably going to mean then that this piece here is going to get cut. We're going to bring it further along, and then we're going to elbow off that 22 that way and then down onto this pipe here. So what we're going to do is we know then that we're going to put two 15 mils coming up and then two elbows going across to where we're going to work. So it's a good idea that now we just pop apart our butane pieces and get these stubs made up and soldered now. That's going to make it a lot easier for us. So let's do that quickly. The bit I love most. Oh, dropping bits everywhere. Soldering on your knees. Just down on your knees in general. Wow, guys, just watch those ox cutters fly through that pipe. You probably didn't notice there, I also removed the little badge as well off the copper pipe, which drives me mental when they put that on there. Anyway, I'm just getting my little stubby bits soldered on now, and just still really impressed with the system here for getting this stuff on. It's absolutely wicked. And after about 5 minutes work, ready to pressure test. Good news as well, guys, the dodgy one that I was worried about, just done, and it's not leaked. Right then, gang, so we've pressure tested these two pipes now. Absolutely fine on those joints, especially the one I was really worried about. So now what I'm going to do is drain the heating system down. If you wanted to at this point, you could turn the heating system back on before draining down and then feel these pipes to see which is the flow and return, but all my TRVs are universal, so it doesn't really matter. So once you've done that, you want to turn the heating system off. You need to make sure that the stats are turned down, make sure the time clocks are switched off. If you're really worried, pull the power to the pump and also switch the boiler off, and pull the fuse to the whole heating system if you're really worried about it. Now I'm going to take this downstairs and get draining out. Right, so we've got a drain off down here that you can tell I've fitted because it's here. Still got to finish off that bit of skirting board. Right, so we're going to pop that on here. Now this is a drop down leg, but it will drain off the area we want to work on. Got a bit of water there. Right, so we're now draining down. Also, it's a good idea to check on the radiator you're working on, the one you're draining off with, that it's fully open on the lock shield. Oh yeah, there's those fans there. They are quality though. So TRV's fully open. I know the lock shield's, I know that's open for shizzle. I've done a video before about how to drain down either an F&E or pressurised system, but after what I've just done there, I'd go around, open up all the radiator vents upstairs, and then go and sit down next to my tabby cat for about half an hour, give him a good old stroke, make sure that the hose has stopped running, and then I'll go back to the pipework where I'm working. Right, so everything's drained down now. We'll be putting this radiator back on. Cute. So we know for a fact that this pipe here is just going to join up onto that one there. This we're just going to cut and then put a straight and then an elbow and an elbow up so it comes out nice and straight on that. And we're also going to do the same over here with what's left of this pipe, but we're going to have to just take a little bit of the top of that joist out. I'm not worried about doing that. We can cut into joists, especially when it's just a small piece here. It's just going to be sort of an edge piece. And also, it's a 9x3 joist. As a chicken would say, it's clucking massive. So we're teeing into the system here. As you're aware, these are the main flow and return 22 mils. They're a tee off from somewhere else in the house, but as long as you know that they supply the flow and return of that radiator above, you know that you'll be able to tee in the radiator below, and that's what we're doing there. You'll notice as well that we're bringing our 22 mil and then we're reducing it down through that tee to 2 15 mil feeds each side. That is how we always do this type of work. In the next video, I'll be talking to you about how many radiators you can add onto a 15 mil feed, and also all the tweaks and tricks that you can use to get that new radiator working if you're having a problem once you've installed it. So we've got everything back on again. Just going to do a couple of little bits. I just nip up these valves here, just nip them. They don't need to be mad tight. The olives on these will probably nip up quite nicely. We've already done our pressure test downstairs, haven't we? So we know that that's going to be okay. So what I would now do is make sure that all the radiator valves are open in the house, and then you can either follow the video that I've made in the past, how to fill up a pressurised heating system or how to fill up an F&E tank heating system, get the whole heating system filled back up again, and then we can turn it all back on. I'm going to be lucky here because I don't need to manually vent out all my radiators because I've got a load of these Aladdin auto vents on here, which I'll also have in our Amazon store as well. So first things first, let's get up in the loft. Got no pressure at the moment, so just going to open that and we're just going to give that a crack. So that's just cracked open there, just a tiny bit, and that's fully open there. So now the system is filling, but I've still got the drain off outside opened up. This is a good idea. To do it like this is a nice way of doing it for me, because I'm currently up in the loft opening up that valve. And if I can have it so, okay, I'm allowing water into the system, but to enable the system to fill up, I'm actually with the system downstairs, that's much better. So I'll be coming down here now, pop downstairs. But we've still got our hose there and that's still open. We should be able to come out here and see in a sec the water is coming out. Look, there you go. So we've got water coming out now. This is by far the best way to fill a heating system up. So now I've got control as to whether the system's going to start filling and actually pressurising properly because of that valve just down there. So now I'm going to shut it. So that's now shut. The system is now pressurising. And look, I'm right down here next to the radiator that I've been working on, and I know that I can check it straight away. But the most important bit is that I can go back up here and get straight to the pipework and have a good look, make sure we haven't got any leaks. First indication, just it's not beautiful soldering, but it needs to just work. So let's see if we've actually got a bit of water coming up here now. Yep. Straight away got water coming up here. And what I'll do actually, I might as well just balance this radiator now. So there it is shut. And now that's in its balanced position. Open that as well. That's all good. That's going to automatically vent out of here, so I don't have to worry about it. Now, you might be like, why is he going around opening radiators that he's closed? Now, I don't usually do this. I don't usually close all the radiators in a house when I do a drain down, purely to save time, because usually what you'll find if you do that, you'll find that you get airlocks. But because I'm here at my own gaff, I'm quite happy to just take that risk. Just going to leave those two there. I've got a feeling those valves are a bit more they need a little bit more tweaking to open up. This one's on the end of a run, so sometimes that needs just a bit more. I want to see 1 bar cold. That's basically what we're aiming at on a pressurised system, or that's what I get mine at. I know it's pitch black, guys. Hold. It'd be nice to see a tiny little bit of pressure in here now, if anything. Oh, we are. How about that? Guys, that is really good to see. Really, really encouraging. Now, you'd obviously expect me to go to every radiator and touch it and feel it, and I do absolutely love doing that. Let's just have another look down here. We've now got heating system water to there and there, but these valves are both shut at the moment. We haven't got them open, but we don't really need to go up to every radiator because look, thermal camera, that'll do it. I can just have a look with that, can't I? So is that radiator getting hot? So that says to me that radiator is getting hot. Obviously the heating system's still catching up, but we've definitely got flow there, so that's good. This beast, slowly getting hot. This rad's getting hot. All our pipework's hot down there. Let's have a look at this radiator here. I want you to see this. So there you go. At the moment, our radiator is 11 degrees C, okay? Let's open this up and see what we get. Right, so we're getting hot already. See that? Is that rising up the radiator? Look at that. So that's what that diverter does. Okay, we've got a little bit just shooting across the bottom, probably just getting past the diverter. But look, you see that, how that's working for us? So let's just let that vent itself out for a little while. It's going to take a few minutes to do it, but we're relying now on our little Aladdin auto vent up here to just get everything out, okay? Hello, my darling, how about you? How are you doing? Oh, look at you. Oh, what are they? Yeah, I bet you are. Got no heating, love. Oh, look at those. That's for later. Right, where are we getting now? Oh yeah, we're really getting up there now, look at that. Almost to the top. And as soon as we get to the top like that, you'll see that this red section down here is going to shoot right up there. We should see it nice and hot right at the top up there. It's still only 16 degrees up at the top of the rad. I'll confirm it by feeling it. Oh yeah. Obviously guys, because we're using auto vents, we'd still need to top the system up if it's a pressurised system, just like we would do if we're normally venting. Right, so it's been about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Let's see where we are now. Wow, 60 degrees at the top there. Absolutely fantastic. Roasting hot. That radiator over there, roasting hot. She's hot. That's hot. Everything is hot. So we've got the radiator installed. Everything's filled up, we've tested for leaks, there's no leaks anywhere, and we're now ready to try and integrate our radiator onto the heating system. The first thing I do, and this is going to sound so basic, and this is a basic video, but let's remember that there's people out there who maybe have never done this before, or there might be apprentices who want to know the process that their boss, while they're running around and not being able to teach them, they're going through their boss's head, and the apprentice is like, well, what the hell is going on? So the first thing I do, and it's really simple, is turn the system on. Turn the system on fully. Find all automatic air vents and purge those of air, okay? If once you've done that, you need to top up the pressure in the heating system. I've done videos on how to do that already. I'll leave links to that below. But effectively what I'm trying to tell you is you might not need to do anything to get this radiator working and to get all the other services working in the house normally as well. Perhaps the system was over-spec'd before you added the radiator, and therefore once you've turned the system on, boom, this is getting hot. Every other radiator in the house is getting hot. The underfloor heating's getting hot. The coil to the indirect unvented cylinder that you've installed is getting hot, and everything's great. I mean, end this video now. Pour yourself out a pint, scrub yourself on the belly, okay, because you've done a great job. But obviously you could wait an hour, which is the minimum I'd wait to see if this sort of thing's working. I mean, when you're working at someone's house, it's going to take you that long to clear up, to get everything in the van, hopefully, and make sure that the whole system is working okay. If after an hour you're finding that other radiators in the system aren't getting hot, or you're finding the radiator that you've installed isn't getting hot, you might need to follow a few steps. Step number one is going to be balancing the heating system, or you might need to rebalance it. Now, it's one of those horrible things as a plumber when you go around someone's house and you've fitted this new radiator and everything isn't working quite properly. You think, well, I'm going to have to balance the system. And then you go around the radiators, oh my God, they're already balanced. It's like, right, we can have a little bit of a problem on our hands. But one of the things that I would do, if you find that maybe other radiators aren't getting hot, is to actually balance and strangle out the new radiator that you've installed. On this one here, the lock shield is an Allen key type, and different types of lock shields, and you'll learn this as a plumber, have different types of closing and opening. What I mean by that is, on most standard lock shields where you've got the old kind of slit type that you'd open with an adjustable, quarter of a turn is the lock shield is now wisping open, and it's allowing a reasonable amount of flow to go through the radiator without pinching flow from elsewhere. It's also doing a really important thing and allowing the different temperature from the inlet to the outlet of that radiator to be about 12 to 14, 15 degrees, and that will allow your boiler to condense more and will actually save you money on your heating bills. But with this type, when you've got the Allen key type, you sometimes find you have to open it a little bit more. A little tip I'll give you for that is popping is that the cat? What's he meowing about? A little tip that I'll give you for that is to get a slotted screwdriver or a longish screwdriver, so you can put the screwdriver onto the body of the radiator, pop the handle of the screwdriver on your ear, and then as you open up the valve, you'll start to hear a little wisp coming through, or you usually should do if your pump speed is adequate enough to feed the radiator. So it's a good thing to be able to do that. Just add that little wisp, give it half an hour, and then just see what's happening. That's one of the real biggest things if I was going to give you a tip on how to do this. And I understand that this video is probably going to be more of a talking video than a doing video, because the plumbing side of this has been done. This is all now about tweaking the system and getting it to work how you want it. So it's a good thing to be able to hear the wisp coming through and just crack the radiator open. And like I said, if it was going to be the biggest tip I'd give you for doing this, is just to allow everything, take your time. Everything you do, give it 15 minutes at least to see if what you've done has had an effect on the system. And just a quick tip for you here, try and get your Allen key so it's in a position that's kind of a straight position, so 6 o'clock, something like that. And then you know when you turn that this way to 3 o'clock, you know then you've given it a quarter of a turn. Then you turn it this way to 12 o'clock, you know it's had half a turn. And I'm going to just give it one full turn open like that, so back to 6 o'clock again, and that should hopefully now mean it's balanced. I really need to clean my tools. They are filthy. Them filthy tools there, full of dusty rust. But you know what they say, clean tools, no work. I suppose I could say that I'm kind of updating what I usually say when it comes to balancing systems out. I used to say balance the radiators upstairs and don't worry so much about the ones downstairs. I'd now say pretty much balance every radiator in the house. Make sure you've done exactly what I've done there, and then leave the system for half an hour to an hour. Remember, if you've got a different type lock shield, particularly this type that I'm showing you here, that's probably only going to need a quarter of a turn open. Make sure at this point that you open every one of the TRVs in the house, so that means the system is running at full capacity. And also make sure that your indirect cylinder, if you've got one, is open and running as well. And remember as well, if you're finding that all the radiators, after you've balanced and after you've turned the pump up, aren't getting adequate flow, consider just cracking open the lock shield on that particular radiator just to make sure you haven't strangled it down too far. The next thing I do is, if you can find a valve on the return side of the cylinder, that will be a balancing valve. It does exactly what the lock shield does on a radiator, but the balancing valve on the return from the cylinder coil will be your way of strangling the flow that goes to the coil. This is really important because the coils usually take a 22mm feed, and if a 2-port valve or a 3-port valve opens up flow to go through to that coil, it's going to pinch all the flow, or quite a lot of the flow, from the rest of the system. Now sometimes this is fine if you've got a massive pump and a massive boiler and the people who've worked previously on the system thought, well, everything's working fine, it doesn't matter. But you've added a new radiator, you've probably diverted flow down to that radiator from another place, and it's good practice to make sure that the coil coming from the cylinder is properly regulated. Now sometimes you'll see it's just a gate valve that someone's completely shut, or what I've done on the system here, I've put a lever valve on and just made sure that I shut it and then just crack it open a little bit, and then that's done. Two-port valve there. This is the feed into the top of the coil. Automatic air vent. Tested that. That's hot. That's working. Valve off. If you ever have a problem with this coil, we can valve it off there, just like that. And then this is my balancing valve. And if you look at that, end on, pretty much shut, isn't it? So that's what I use to balance the flow through here. But sometimes you'll also find you've got a thing called a flow regulating valve, which is a much better way of doing it. It's the proper way of doing it, but also it's the most expensive, and you're not going to tend to find this type of valve on domestic situations. You're going to find that in a commercial property. But it's very important that you do it, and I'd recommend, while you've got the system drain down, to check that your tanker's got that on there. If it has, great. If it hasn't, you've got the system drain down. Cut it in, get it in there now. It's a really, really good idea. The next thing we're going to talk about is boiler temperature, because it is quite a simple one. You shouldn't actually have to do anything with your boiler temperature. It's rare, if I've fitted a radiator on a heating system, that I'm going to be turning the boiler temperature up. But if the boiler can eventually get out 70 to 75 degree hot water, then you pretty much shouldn't really need to touch it, apart from maybe a tiny tweak on the thermostat. But you shouldn't have to do a lot to that. So when it comes to the boiler side of things, I just leave it well alone. We're talking about how we divert flow to the new radiator without pinching it from other radiators and other services. So what is the most important aspect of flow? And it is the heart of the heating system, the one that pumps everything about, and you've guessed it, I've said it already, it's the pump. Now on older pumps, sometimes you'll find that there's 1, 2, 3 speeds if you're lucky, and hopefully what will happen is you'll go up into the airing cupboard and you'll find that it's on speed 1, and it's like, wow, speed 1, how about that? That's so cool. And everything's working okay. End the video, go away now, scrub yourself on the belly, maybe even have just a light smidgen of a poo. But if you find that the system isn't working properly and you get up into the loft and you find it's set to 1, then just set the pump to 2. How about that? It's great. And you might find that the system works okay. Now there's another thing. If the system's not working properly and you go up into the airing cupboard and you find the pump is set to 3 already, or you've got a fully modulating pump and it's fully whacking out already, you might need to upgrade the pump. But there are a few other things that you might want to consider as well. Pumps, remember, have a magnetic field around them. We've got electricity there, and there's a magnetic field in the pipework near them. It might be a good idea, while you've got the system drained down, to just whip the pump off quickly, making sure you've got new pump valve rubbers, and this is just a tip. I always keep my rubbers nearby. So look, I've got my pump rubbers in here. Plumbers will have loads of these. We keep them all the time. If you ever get a new pump and you've got extra rubbers in there, don't throw those rubbers away. Don't reuse your rubbers, guys. Don't rinse them out and repeat. It's very bad. But what I'm saying is you take the pump off, check to make sure they haven't got loads of crap in the pump valve gates, because that can happen. And honestly, it's common, this is. It's not one of those things that randomly happens. This can happen if you haven't got a properly inhibited heating system, it's not been properly looked after, there's corrosion happening, and you find that the pump valves have got corroded and they've closed up, and sometimes you'll open up and you'll see the hole is like 10 mil when it should be 22 mil, and it's trying to feed a whole heating system off that. So it's crackers, isn't it? So make sure you've done that. I realise this is in video number 3, and if you've watched them in sequence and done one bit at one time every time you've watched it, that right now you're like, oh my god, plumber parts, why are you telling me this now? I've got the whole heating system full up. Do you know what I mean? There you go. If we've got a fully modulating pump, so we've got something like the Velo that I've got here, and that is a pump that recognises the pressure on it and slows down and speeds up according to how many services are opening and calling for flow in the heating system, sometimes you'll find that all you need to do is just slightly turn that up a little bit to get a few extra bits of pump pressure head on the way out, and you'll find that that then will supply the whole system okay. Sometimes you won't. Sometimes the pump is just not man enough, or it's old and you have to replace the pump. I sit down now because I need to think a little bit more because my brain's gone. So you've balanced the whole heating system, you've maybe adjusted the modulation of the pump a bit, you found you've got a 3-speed pump and it was on 1, you've set it to 2 now and everything's getting nice and hot, but you can't hear loads of light hissing because it's too high. Basically you've done it, it's finished. You could do what I usually do and go around with a Bosch Therm camera and make sure that everything's getting nice and hot. But really, you guys aren't going to have that equipment if you're like DIYing or you're just starting out as an apprentice. You're going to be able to go around and make sure those radiators are hot with the back of your hand. Now, it will get to a point in your life, every time you go in a house or every time you go into a pub, when we let back in pubs, if we ever are, you will brush the radiator with the back of your hand. It's just something you do, and it will never go away. One of the things I would say about this particular part 3 of this whole little mini video series that I've done, is to recognise that what you've done when you've popped a radiator on and the room's getting a lot warmer, recognise that that is really bloody cool, isn't it? You know, that you've gone out there and you've done that. You've done all these tweaks to the system. You've jockeyed the pump, you've got air out the system, you've balanced the system, you've made sure that all the thermostatic radiator valves are open. You've really hammered it for a couple of hours to make sure it's working okay. Number one, pat yourself on the back, have a cup of tea and go, yeah, wicked. And the next thing you need to do is set all the thermostatic radiator valves back down to where they need to be. I usually set them on 3. If you need to leave the customer with a laminated sheet on how thermostatic radiator valves work, well, you could do that, or you could just show them the video that I've got in the description below that I made, how they work, because there's such a weird misconception as to how they work. People think that thermostatic radiator valves measure the temperature of the water in the radiator. They're not. They're measuring the temperature of the air in the room and adjusting the flow of water going into that radiator. So if you want to watch that video, it's in the link below. I understand this isn't my normal type plumber parts video, but I also recognise that I hadn't made it, and it is quite an important last one to the series that we've just made as well. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this little mini series about how to add a radiator to your heating system. If you've got any extra questions or you've done this, comment in the comment section below. There's loads of people who comment there, and there's quite a lot of people who sort of return to the comments who are plumbers, who help out. I obviously read them as well, or read them as much as I can. Or of course, you can join the AL Army and ask me a question direct in the Thursday night live streams that go out at 6:30. Usually I've had a beer. You will get a coherent answer, believe me, all right? Let's get Mr. G. That's another thing. Big G, this is his new sitting place now. This basically sits here. This is where he sits, and he sits there and just stares at the radiator. He's like, meow. George loves it, don't you? Come here, come on, I'll put you on your little bit. Come here. Oh yeah, meow. George is 15 in June, aren't you, mate? You're so old. You're such an old git now, aren't you? Yeah, he's happy. He loves his new bit of radiator, don't you, mate? He says, yes, I do. So yeah. Typical.